Superstation, the future radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, September 27th, 2021, and we're live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, many people were glued to the TV and glued to their smartphones and watching social media, getting social media alerts, getting text messages from friends and family regarding the R. Kelly trial. The verdict came in this afternoon. It was surprising how quickly the jury came back with a guilty verdict on all 9 counts. Robert Sylvester Kelly has been found guilty on 1 count of racketeering and 8 counts of violating the Interstate Sex Trafficking Act, known as the Mann Act. Took place in a Brooklyn, New York federal court this afternoon. I was flipping back and forth between MSNBC and the Black News Channel. I got to see my girl Candace Kelly with Dre Clark. Candace Kelly giving legal analysis about the jury verdict. We're going to talk some about this today. We posted about it on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. I've been reading some articles, looking at different legal analysis, looking at commentary about it. New York Times has some really good coverage on this. And I've been reading the New York Times coverage basically every day on this case. So we'll talk some about that. And many people are asking what took so long for R. Kelly to be convicted. And what's interesting is outside of court today, there was some diehard R. Kelly fans. They seem shocked by the conviction. I don't know if they've been actually paying attention to the trial, but they seem shocked. And, I'm just like, you remember Rick James said cocaine is a powerful drug. Fame can be a powerful drug as well. Because as I said before, if Robert Sylvester Kelly was just like R. Kelly, if he was Robert Kelly, the janitor at the local high school, he would have been convicted a long time ago. Okay. That's what's all is to it. He would have been convicted a long time ago. Fame is a powerful drug. So R. Kelly is convicted on all counts after decades of accusations of abuse. So we'll break this down. And then also, today is the birthday of the man who every week took us on the hippest trip in America. That would be one Don Cornelius. Today's Don Cornelius' birthday. He was born September 27th. 1936. We're going to talk some about the history of Don Cornelius. I've dealt with this before a few years ago. I think it was either when he committed suicide or when he died. He was 75 years old when he died. And I know blackamericaweb.com has a good piece on this, but I've talked about Don Cornelius before, but it's a brilliant he built the empire. This man was a former police officer, and he invested $400 into a broadcasting class. Okay, into a broadcasting class, and he ends up getting on a radio station, and it's a brilliant story, what happened to, how he built Soul Train. Okay, so we'll talk some about Don Cornelius as well. And then a couple days ago, we didn't get a chance to, September 18th was the anniversary of the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And that was part of the compromise of 1850. We talked some about the compromise of 1850 here on the show. So we'll talk about the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which was passed September 18th, 1850. Now, in the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent. throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it corrects your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also register for the new 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, so we're going to jump into this first story here, dealing with the verdict in the R. Kelly trial. And we've talked about it. We've been covering the trial here a lot. Now, some days we don't talk about it. There were a couple of times that there was a recess, 2 or 3 day recess in the case. There's some details about the case I just didn't share in the air. This is like really, really graphic testimony. And I feel sorry for a lot of of course, I feel sorry for the victims, but the reporters have to be, the reporters get to hear testimony and get to hear details. And like people like Dre Clark for Black News Channel, he said a lot of what they're hearing is so graphic they can't even share on the air. Okay, so this is this is crazy. But if we look at this piece here from Washington Post, okay, Washington Post has a good article, and also there's really, really good reporting also from the New York Times, and they have a live update on what's going on with the trial as well, and different aspects of this trial. But if we look at this here from the Washington Post, R. Kelly found guilty on all charges in sex trafficking trial. Let's pull this up here. R. Kelly found guilty on all federal charges in sex trafficking and racketeering trial. It was 1 count of racketeering, 8 counts of violation of the Interstate Sex Trafficking Act, known as the Mann Act. Now, in the landmark conclusion to the most high-profile trial to arise from the music industry in the Me Too, #MeToo era, a jury found R. Kelly guilty on all 9 federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges. The verdict was announced Monday, September 27th, in the Brooklyn courthouse for the Eastern District of New York. The disgraced R&B singer, 54 years old, faces 10 years. The mandatory minimum to life in prison for the charges related to nearly 30 years worth of allegations that he physically and sexually abused women and minors. Okay, but is under the racketeering charge. Okay, on the other side of the break, we'll have an explanation of that. Now, the verdict followed 5 weeks of often harrowing testimony from 50 witnesses and arrived swiftly on the second day of jury deliberations. R. Kelly was found guilty on 1 count of racketeering, a charge that is often levied in organized crime cases, and 8 counts of violating the Mann Act, which is aimed at curbing sex trafficking. Okay, especially interstate sex trafficking. Okay, transporting people across state lines for sex trafficking. All right, so, and this is what they got Jack Johnson on also. Okay, heavyweight champion Jack Johnson. Now, R. Kelly still faces additional federal charges on sexual assault and abuse in Illinois. Okay, there's still 2 other trials, all right, that he's facing, and it's suspected that one of the themes of this trial is that R. Kelly did not act alone. There were enablers. There were people who helped him. So if it can be proven that people knowingly aided him, they knowingly participated, knew they were breaking the law, knowingly engaged in this, enabled, then they could be possibly prosecuted as well. It depends upon the statute of limitations and the actual charges. But it's clear that even though he headed everything up and people were working for him, it's clear there were enablers that assisted him for years. Now, R. Kelly's legal team did not respond to the Washington Post request for comment on the verdict. Black news channel called one of R. Kelly's defense attorneys outside of court. He really didn't make any sense. Devereaux Canick. He really didn't make any sense. R. Kelly, whose full name is Robert Sylvester Kelly, previously denied the charges. In footage from outside the courthouse, Kelly's lawyer, Devereaux Canick, said his client, quote, was not anticipating this verdict, end quote. Okay, so what the hell trial were you watching? He said he was not anticipating this verdict. What trial were you watching? Canick also stated that the team would consider an appeal, according to a CNN reporter. You can appeal all you want to. Okay, now I said this. I think I probably said this last week. I think I posted it on social media. Last week is a blur, but I bet R. Kelly wishes he could fly right about now. Okay, now Gloria Allred, attorney Gloria Allred, who represented 3 of R. Kelly's accusers, described R. Kelly as, quote unquote, the worst of all the predators that I have pursued, the worst of all the predators that I have pursued throughout her 47 years of practicing law. She said R. Kelly thought he could get away with all of this, but he didn't. He thought he could get away with all of this, but he didn't, because despite the fact that he thought he could control all of his victims, he was wrong. Now, the other side of this, and I haven't heard a lot of talk about this a little bit. Okay, so from all the reporting that I'm hearing, and even in Surviving R. Kelly, I think they talked about it some. R. Kelly was the victim of molestation when he was younger, when he was a child. So even though he committed horrendous acts, he still needs psychological help, because he was the victim of molestation as a child. Okay. So yeah, he needs to go to prison, but he also needs psychological help while he's in prison as well. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. We're on a mandatory commercial break. Back and break in 4 minutes. Share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Also, stand by. How's everybody doing? Gloria Allred is an ambulance chaser. Actually, Gloria Allred, clients go seek out Gloria Allred. She don't have to chase ambulances. They go seek out Gloria Allred. Okay, stand by, everybody. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. What is this? Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. Stand by on mandatory commercial break. We've got Sharon, we have Sherwin, Lorenzo, Luana. Okay. Was anybody here in Detroit for the screening of the film? Screening and discussion of the film Happy, dealing with the role of economics and development of civilization. That was Sunday, Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. I was there with Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Who still needs to register for the new 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Stand by.
So we deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. Question: would you seek your...
Stand by, back for break in 1 minute. Stand by.
The Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, September 27th, 2021. Some people may call this a day of reckoning. Some people may call this the chickens coming home to roost. Some people may call this day a day of karma. You reap what you sow, etc. As we were talking about at the top of the show, R. Kelly was found guilty today in the Brooklyn federal court of all 9 charges, 1 count of racketeering and 8 counts of violating the Interstate Sex Trafficking Act, known as the Mann Act. All right. You can give us a call if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. All right, I want to go back to this piece here, and we're going to go to clip 2. Shakita, I'll try to figure out what's going on with clip 1. We're going to go to clip 2 here from the Black News Channel in just a second. I want to go back to this piece here from the Washington Post. So the 45 prosecutorial witnesses described an elaborate system of abuse bolstered by R. Kelly's immense fame. Abuse bolstered by R. Kelly's immense fame and professional power, as well as by the cooperation of his employees and close associates, So in this trial, even in surviving R. Kelly, it became clear that he wasn't acting alone. He had help. Okay. Now he was paying people. He was heading everything up, giving the orders, but he didn't do all this by himself. And this became even more evident in the trial. Okay. Now, as widely described in reports from the trial, numerous accusers testified that they were underage when they met R. Kelly, whom they said went on to control their lives. In all, 11 accusers testified. A woman identified as Jane stated that she was forced into sexual encounters with other women and was unable to leave rooms without R. Kelly's permission. Another, Geronda Pace, who we saw in Surviving R. Kelly, Geronda Pace said he assaulted her and knowingly gave her herpes, an assertion seemingly backed by a personal physician who took the stand to discuss R. Kelly's medical history. So the doctor, R. Kelly's doctor, who treats him for herpes, testified in this trial. R. Kelly's doctor, who has treated him for herpes, testified in this trial. Now, Jane also said that R. Kelly forced her to have an abortion. The same day as Jane's testimony, a woman who spoke in court anonymously said R. Kelly once told her he married Aaliyah in 1994 when the up-and-coming singer was 15, so that she could legally obtain an abortion. Multiple witnesses made mention of Aaliyah, who died in a plane crash in 2001. A woman named Angela said she saw R. Kelly sexually abuse Aaliyah on a tour bus when Aaliyah would have been around 13 years old. Now, the racketeering charge, and we're going to go to a further legal explanation of the racketeering charge also here in just a minute. The racketeering charge made it possible for prosecutors to present more evidence to the jury, therefore painting a fuller picture than they might have been able to present had the charges against R. Kelly been limited to individual instances of alleged assault or abuse. Okay, so the racketeering charges gave them a wider scope. The racketeering charges made it possible for prosecutors to present more evidence to the jury, therefore painting a fuller picture than they might have been able to present had the charges against R. Kelly been limited to individual instances of alleged assault or abuse. Now, the defense called on 5 witnesses. The prosecution had 45 witnesses. The defense had 5 witnesses, and none of them, if I remember correctly, none of them women. So just the amount of evidence that the prosecution presented, because I'm watching the trial, basically I'm covering it, I'm studying this every day. There's a few days we didn't talk about it because we were dealing with other stories and things like this, and a lot of the testimony is so graphic. It was things I didn't even want to share on the air. Okay. But I'm looking at all the evidence. I said, oh, his ass going to prison. I said, yeah, they're going to remix his ignition in prison. That's what's going to happen. Okay. So the defense called on 5 witnesses, a few of whom worked for R. Kelly, and at first denied having seen him associate with underage girls. Upon cross-examination, such as with R. Kelly's childhood friend and former bodyguard, prosecutors were able to expose discrepancies in the testimonies. And an accountant who worked for R. Kelly recalled drafting a document that described Kelly as the head of RSK Enterprises. The head of RSK Enterprises, a notable development given the criminal enterprise component of a racketeering charge. Oh, so he's sitting there, he can't believe this happened. I'm like, which trial were you watching? I want to go to this clip here. This is we're going to go to clip number 2, Shakita. This is from the Black News Channel. This is reporter Dre Clark. Dre Clark did a fantastic job day in, day out on the Black News Channel, reporting on this. And today he was on with my girl Candace Kelly. Candace Kelly and I are sometimes co-panelists on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered usually every Friday. And Candace has a paid gig on Black News Channel, so I'm trying to figure out how I can do that as well. She provides legal analysis for the Black News Channel. So I'm working on getting on BNC and MSNBC as well. But I want to go to this clip here. Dre Kelly is talking about the guilty verdict against R. Kelly. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Bringing to us this breaking news of R. Kelly being found guilty on that charge certainly is interesting because throughout the time that we've been covering this here on BNC, different legal experts have been giving different ideas of what they thought would happen. And a lot of them that I've spoke with have said that they thought it would be really tough to get a guilty verdict on that charge. So it's interesting that that's the first thing that you're bringing to us now as it's happening, that he has been found guilty on that racketeering, because experts have said that was a tough one. So it's interesting that we're hearing so quickly from the jury. It's interesting that we're getting this guilty verdict, Ray. You are, of course, standing by there getting the latest. You talked about this charge and the different charges. Let's face it, R. Kelly has been accused for years and years of a variety of things. Racketeering was not at the top of the list. He's mainly, of course, been accused of sexually harassing young women and young girls. What exactly have you been covering here that indicates to you that this is all tied together? What are your thoughts now?
Well, you know, you're right. The racketeering charge is very complex and complicated. And so the legal experts you spoke with are exactly right. But the lead U.S. attorney, the prosecutor, Elizabeth Geddes, was very, very meticulous.
She took her time in her opening arguments and explained to the jury that she was going to be able to illustrate and show that R. Kelly is guilty of all 14 acts. And in her closing argument, which lasted more than 6 hours, highly unusual, she went through each of those acts. And with each of the acts, she used evidence, she used testimony, she used exhibits, audio recordings, video recordings to demonstrate to the jury why she believes R. Kelly is guilty of everything across the board. She did it so in a very convincing fashion because she took her time. There were some legal experts who questioned if 6 hours was too long, that maybe she risked the possibility of losing the jury or boring the jury. But she stuck to her script. What she proposed in the beginning, she produced on in the end, and illustrated very clearly why she believes that R. Kelly really for decades, she said, has been able to run this vast criminal enterprise and use his fame and his money to commit his crimes in plain sight, and then to dominate his victims by threatening them and abusing them and indoctrinating them as to control their thoughts, as to control their movements. And she said he was only able to do this because of his inner circle, his bodyguards, his runners, his assistants. She illustrated how each of those individuals played a part in aiding and abetting R. Kelly and helping him to run this illicit, illegal enterprise for not just 1 year or 2 years, but for almost 30 years, she says. And it would appear as if the jury believes her and they listened to her closely. And what we're hearing now is the result of that. She was successful. We're waiting to find out if he was found to be in violation of all 14 of those acts, and we'll know it's just a matter of time because the jury has to answer each of those acts. But this was a prosecutor who was determined to win a conviction, and so far she has done that.
Here it is.
Okay. All right. Pause right there. Pause right there. Thanks. Okay. So that was after the first guilty verdict. Okay. First, you found out he was guilty on one count of racketeering. Then the other verdicts came out. Now, what's interesting is that you could hear in the background. I'm flipping back and forth between. Well, I was watching Black News Channel on TV on cable, and listening to MSNBC through the TuneIn app on my phone. All right, so I can monitor both channels at the same time. I do that a lot. I monitor both channels at the same time. So when they're outside the courtroom, you can hear like the fans of R. Kelly's outside going crazy. They're distraught because of the guilty verdict. And I'm like, you actually thought he was going to get away with this. Okay. Okay. Shakita, I'm going to send you this clip here. This is from NBC News. The other clip wasn't playing correctly. This is from NBC News right after the verdict here. So I'm going to send this to you here in just a second. Okay, 313-778-7600 is a call-in number if you have a question or comment. And actually, what we're going to do, I want to go to clip 3, Shakita. This gives the two attorneys on the panel. This is from Yodit Tawalde's show, Making the Case on the Black News Channel. And Yodit Tawalde was out, but they talked to attorney Tanita Thompson, who's a trial attorney, and criminal defense attorney Tony Thetford. And Tanita Thompson went through and broke down from a legal perspective the racketeering charge and the burden of proof that the prosecution had to meet to get a conviction on the racketeering charge. Okay, let's go to clip 3, Shakita.
The man who was once one of the most popular singers in the world, today convicted in federal court of racketeering and sex trafficking. In this high-profile trial, prosecutors called 45 witnesses, including 11 accusers. And today, around 3 o'clock this afternoon, A jury said that what happened to these women, girls, and boys, most of them black, was criminal. And now there'll be no more hit songs, rock star lifestyle, and endless fans for the man who sang "I Believe I Can Fly." R. Kelly now faces up to life in prison. This is Making the Case. I'm Laverne McGee, filling in for Yodi. We have a team of legal experts ready to help us break down today's verdict. But first, we want to start on the ground in Brooklyn. BNC's Dre Clark has been there covering this trial from the beginning. Good to see you, Dre. This was the jury's first full day to deliberate after getting this case on Friday. Then we got word from you, actually, you were on air, that a guilty verdict had been reached. So tell us how the day unfolded.
Yeah, Laverne, the jury in totality deliberated for close to 9 hours since getting the case last Friday. You know, we were all inside the court room this morning at 9:30 when deliberations resumed. Early on, the jury had indicated they had a few questions, and the judge worked it out. They answered the questions, and we went to lunch. And there was last week, we had petitioned to hear some of the audio clips that the jurors heard during the trial. The prosecution said the audio clips you could hear R. Kelly berating and physically abusing some of his victims, and we wanted to hear it. And so we petitioned the court, and they finally released the audio today. As we were in the media room listening to the audio, and it was sexually graphic. It was very disturbing. One of the court officers casually walked in and said, "We have a verdict." And we all looked over and said, "What did you just say?" And he said, "We have a verdict." And so we rushed upstairs to the 6th floor, and it was shortly before 3 o'clock that we heard the verdict that R. Kelly had been found guilty on all counts. A jury of 7 men, 5 women, deliberating again close to 9 hours, reaching a consensus that they believe Robert Sylvester Kelly is guilty on all counts. Laverne?
Dre, I know you weren't able to be directly in the courtroom as the verdict was read, but let's face it, he's been getting away with these accusations for years and years and years. What was his reaction in court today?
He was stoic. He just looked straight ahead. He didn't flinch. He just looked straight ahead. And that really has been his posture throughout this trial. Although last week, during the closing arguments, as one of the prosecutors was giving her closing argument, R. Kelly, for a moment there, became animated. He vigorously shook his head from right to left and left to right to indicate that he was in total disagreement with what he was saying. He also dropped his head. He clasped his hands. That was the most animated we saw him throughout the trial was last week. But today, when he heard the announcement that he was going to be found guilty on all counts, he was very stoic. I think it's beginning to sink in, as I said earlier today, that R. Kelly, the entertainer, the singer, is no more. He is now Robert Sylvester Kelly, a convicted felon who will likely spend the rest of his life in prison.
After all this time. All right. Thank you so much. BNC's Dre Clark live for us in Brooklyn. Dre, we've got more to discuss. I'm going to check back with you later in the hour. But right now, I want to bring in our legal experts. Tony Thedford is a criminal defense and civil rights attorney in Chicago, and Tanetta Thompson is a trial attorney for the city of San Francisco's Department of Police Accountability. Good to have you both here. First, I want to get your reactions. Tanetta, I'll start with you.
Yes, today's verdict was absolutely tremendously impactful for these victims of sexual assault. What it did was show that these victims, even though they had to relive this horrendous act that spanned decades, that they did not relive this horrendous act in vain, and that it was for something, and that justice has finally been served for these young, mainly Black women and men who were victims of R. Kelly's sexual predatory crimes.
Tony, are you surprised he was convicted?
No, not at all. In fact, the word I would use is expected. When I was on before, we talked about the likelihood that he would be convicted based on the massive amount of evidence that the government presented in this case, as well as more than 50 witnesses. When you counter that with the response by the defense, which was weak at best and obviously ineffective, this was expected. So I'm not surprised at all.
And I really want to go over what happened there, because Kelly was convicted of 1 count of racketeering and 8 counts of violating the Mann Act, which prohibits sex trafficking across state lines. I think this is still confusing to some people. I want you to briefly explain to our viewers what racketeering is and why Kelly was charged with racketeering rather than rape or sexual assault, because that's really what people have been hearing about all these years. Is he's been accused of molesting young girls, sexual harassment, the list goes on. Kanetta, can you break that down for us?
Yes, what the racketeering does is allows prosecutors to bring, or federal prosecutors to bring in acts that may have reached the statute of limits, let's say in rape or sexual abuse that you may have in the federal statute. And it allows them to bring these crimes and use this evidence, like multiple witnesses as they have, just like if you see, you know, like with the mob or anything like that, you've seen that what racketeering is. And what he did was he used that, he transported these victims to commit these sexual acts, and that in turn was the quote unquote criminal enterprise. And what the prosecutors were able to do was able to say, because you cross these state lines, you're using minors, you're using these victims to cross state lines in order to further your deviant acts, we therefore can charge you with racketeering, which otherwise may have ran its course or statute of limitations.
So that's what it took to get R. Kelly. Well, Tony, you never represented Kelly, but you did work closely with attorneys in Chicago who did. What are your thoughts on this conviction? What do you think the legal minds in Chicago are saying about this tonight?
Well, I think initially it's a great sense of finality, at least on some level, that he was found guilty and convicted. Again, these allegations have been in the ether now for decades. The case was tried here back in 2009 where he was acquitted. Many of the same sort of allegations were raised in that case even back in 2009. I think what's interesting for us here in Chicago is that he still faces federal charges here in Chicago. In fact, was held in custody here and has been held in custody here for Chicago for since he was charged here. He was only taken to New York to stand trial on those charges that where we just got the guilty verdict. So I think the center of attention will be back here in Chicago regarding R. Kelly and how the government proceeds in that case. And then there's the Minnesota matter, which is the state court matter, which is still pending. So although this brings finality to this case, prior to sentencing, of course, he still has many mountains to climb.
Okay, pause it right there. Pause it right there, Shakita. All right, thank you. Pause it right there. Okay, I want to go back to the clip here pause the clip right there, please. I want to go back to the article here from the Washington Post, then we'll go to the phone lines. Just a second. Okay, so this piece here from the Washington Post, I want to go back to this. So New York Attorney General Letitia James tweeted Monday, September 27th, that although nothing can ever make up for the years of suffering, those individuals finally receive some sense of justice today. Now, R. Kelly's case is the most high-profile sexual misconduct case since the resurgence of the #MeToo movement to mostly involve Black women. Okay, mostly involve Black women. Now, we know Harvey Weinstein's in prison. Some people have forgotten Harvey Weinstein's in prison because you don't hear much from him, but Harvey Weinstein is in prison. Okay. Now, New York Attorney General Letitia James added, quote, 1 in 4 Black girls will be sexually abused before age 18 far more than their white counterparts, 1 in 4. Now, studies I've seen say 40% of African-American, by age 18, 40% of African-American women have been sexually abused. And I came across information on that when Surviving R. Kelly came out, and we were talking about Surviving R. Kelly here on this show, and I was doing research on that, and we'll try to pull up. I think it was an article from BET that talked about a study. Quote, we must do more to protect, defend, and believe our girls before 30 years pass by. That's correct. And this has to do with the same reason why African-American girls and women don't get a lot of coverage from mainstream media when they go missing, is a dehumanization of African-Americans in general, but especially African-American women. Malcolm X was correct when he said the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. But also when you deal with rape, molestation, etc., because of a legacy of slavery, and because African-American women and girls were forced to breed, forced to have sex, forced to breed. African-American men were forced to have sex and breed also, but it's different with women because they carried the child. Because they were forced to breed, you have this dehumanization of African-American women, and then it continued after slavery. You get the Jezebel stereotype. At Ferris State University has the Jim Crow Museum, and they have the Jim Crow Museum online also. They have the physical Jim Crow Museum, but online as well. Dr. David Pilgrim runs the Jim Crow Museum, and on their website they have a section that deals with different stereotypes. One of them deals with the Jezebel stereotype and the hypersexualization of African-American women. When you look at things like the adultification bias and the stereotypes associated with African-American women coming from the society are then projected onto girls, and African-American girls are perceived to know more about sex at younger ages, perceived to be more independent and need less protecting. So all this comes together. And as I've said before, the only reason why R. Kelly was able to get away with this for 30 years is because these were largely Black women and Black girls he was abusing. Because if these were white women, if he was outside of a high school in the Chicago area talking to 15, 16, 17-year-old white girls after school, that would have stopped the first week. That would have stopped the first week. If he recorded a video of himself violating a 14-year-old girl, he would have been found guilty back in 2009. The trial to the 2009. He would have been found guilty back then. If they saw a video of him, even if they couldn't be 100% sure how old she was, that'd have been it. If they saw a video and he's sexually abusing a 14-year-old or what looks like a 14-year-old white girl in the video, that'd have been it. Let's go to the phone lines quickly. Let's go to Jihad, line 1. Jihad, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. Thanks for holding.
Yes, good evening.
How you doing? You're on the air. Go ahead.
Peaceful. Hey, R. Kelly is a victim just as much as those that he victimized. And for Black people in 2021, to participate in something like this that's going on, high-tech lynching. And when you look at, understand that we've been here in America for 466 years.
High-tech lynching of what? High-tech. Jihad, slow down. High-tech lynching of what?
In other words, understand, when you look at the music industry, when you look at, understand, Michael Jackson, you look at, understand, Prince, you look at the Temptations, other different entertainers, Whitney Houston, and you look at these individuals, understanding how their lives played out. And we haven't learned anything, seem like. And, my thing is, understand, God is a just God. Whether most of us...
Jihad. We got 5 minutes left in the show. You said this is a high-tech lynching. I'm going to ask you a second time. A high-tech lynching of what? Of who?
Of what? Okay, we're saying that these young ladies, right? Did they have parents? Okay, why the parents didn't report the children?
Okay, see, Jihad. Some of them did. See, this is part of the problem. People don't give a damn when Black women are abused. This is part of the problem. People don't give a damn when Black women are abused. This is how BS like this was allowed to go on for 30 years. You just proved my point. Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling.
Wrong, period, for anybody to take advantage.
Yeah, it's wrong for anybody, and those have to be held accountable. But we have to stop making excuses when black women and black girls are abused. Yes, you are. No, we have to stop making excuses.
We're not making excuses.
When you said high-tech lynching, you said high-tech lynching. High-tech lynching of who?
In other words,
you brought up high-tech lynching. High-tech lynching of who?
Really behind us?
What? Look. Still, you haven't talked about protecting black women and black girls. See, you still haven't talked about that. You're trying to divert. Thanks for calling, Jihad. Thanks for calling, Jihad. Thanks for calling. Now you want to say wrong is wrong. You should have said that before you mentioned high-tech lynching. This is part of the problem. When black women, and this is how BS like this was allowed to go on. You have punk-ass black men around him that didn't slap the hell out of R. Kelly because he was abusing black women and black girls. You just proved my point. This is how stuff like this is able to take place. See, if all white people disappeared tomorrow, Negroes would still be Negroes. This is how stuff like this. This is why I came out so strongly against the song by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, WAP, because it was financed by Atlantic Records, a white corporation that used two black women to market prostitution around the world. This is what I'm talking about. You can't try to cloak abusing black women in red, black, and green. You can't do that. If you're not going to stand up for black women, shut the hell up. That's just all it is to it. All right. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching because we're going to keep going. I want to talk about the Don Cornelius. I said we'll talk about Don Cornelius. Today is Don Cornelius' birthday. Founder of the Hippest Trip In America Soul Train. We'll talk a little bit about Don Cornelius. I said we'll talk about the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. September 18th was the anniversary of the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, and some of us still have a slave mentality as well. So we'll talk about that as well. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're here 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We had a fantastic show yesterday. We continued our coverage dealing with Haiti. We dealt with Haiti and the Haitian migrants, et cetera, and the background history to that. We dealt with that for about an hour and 20 minutes yesterday. So you can watch the rebroadcast of these shows. We have them archived on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Protect black women or stop having sex with black women. That's just all there is to it. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, let's continue. Okay, I want to finish up this article here. Well, I'm going to finish up a couple paragraphs. This article here from Washington Post. I'm not going to deal with the rest of it. I'll show you the one from New York Times. You can go read the one from the New York Times. And then I want to get to Don Cornelius as well, because it's a fascinating story dealing with Don Cornelius. Okay, let's see here. All right, so this is the one. Let's show the name of the article again. The one from here. Okay, R. Kelly found guilty on all charges in sex trafficking and racketeering trial. And this is Washington Post. Okay, so I want to go back to this. Was on page 2 here. They talked about New York Attorney General Letitia James. Okay, she said we must do more to protect, defend, and believe our girls before 30 years pass by. Chicago Tribune music writer Britt Julius said on Twitter that, quote, multiple generations of Chicago women and girls have had to face this menace with no escape. Okay, multiple generations of Chicago women and girls have had to face this menace with no escape. She's quote, every Black girl I know who grew up here has an R. Kelly story, she wrote. Every Black girl I know who grew up here has an R. Kelly story. Everyone, I am glad those who have felt pain and faced trauma for decades may find peace with this verdict. Okay, now, okay, and then the next one, because I'm looking at my notes here on this article. Okay, so the trial was not the first time that R. Kelly wound up in court over alleged sexual misconduct. He was acquitted of child pornography charges in 2008, but it marks a major turning point. The recording industry for years turned a blind eye to allegations of R. Kelly's abusive behavior towards young women and girls, mainly Black. Because if he was doing this to white women, his ass would have been in prison a long time ago. And even after corroborated reporting, such as the expose that music critic and journalist Jim DeRogatis and then legal reporter Abden Polish published with the Chicago Sun-Times in the year 2000. Now, R. Kelly continued to churn out hits, and the Washington Post reported in its own 2018 investigation, quote, disregard for the singer's alleged behavior played out on many levels, from the billionaire record executive who first signed the dynamic young vocalist in the early 90s to the low-paid assistants who arranged flights, food, and bathroom breaks for his traveling entourage of young women, end quote. Now, published in 2017, a second expose by Godis, sparked by a tip he received the previous year from a woman in Georgia who believed her daughter to be part of a sex cult run by R. Kelly. Pointed at an organization, pointed at a system of abuse, an organized system of abuse, published in July 2017. A second expose by DeRogatis, sparked by a tip he received the previous year in 2016 from a woman in Georgia who believed her daughter to be part of a sex cult run by R. Kelly, pointed at an organized system of abuse. Now, the 6-part Lifetime docuseries Surviving R. Kelly, which aired in January 2019, further explored the allegations following the resurgence of the #MeToo movement in the entertainment industry and beyond. Producer Dream Hampton tweeted after Monday's verdict that she was, quote unquote, grateful to the survivors, the ones who talked and the ones who didn't, end quote. And I watched Surviving R. Kelly when it aired live. I recorded it. And what it did, a lot of those occurrences and instances and reports and news stories, a lot of those things I remembered, but what it did was it put everything together in pretty much in like chronological sequence. So you see all of it together. And when you see all of it together, okay, and you see a pattern, then it takes on, then you're able to put the pieces together. Because even back in 2009, okay, you had social media in 2009, but Twitter wasn't created till I think 2010. We didn't have Instagram in 2009. So even though you had social media, people had Facebook. I went on Facebook a lot in 2009. YouTube was created in 2005. So YouTube was still in its infancy. So even though you had social media then, we didn't have the access to the information, as much information as we do today, okay, to really, really get this information and get it much faster. All right. Now, in July 2019, R. Kelly was arrested on charges of child pornography, enticing a minor to engage in criminal sexual activity and obstruction of justice. He was charged in 2 federal indictments that month, one in Illinois and another in New York, the latter of which led to this trial. the latter of which led to this trial. All right, now the proceedings are far from over. R. Kelly's sentencing is scheduled for May 4th, 2022. May 4th, 2022, he's scheduled for sentencing. And there is still the other federal trial. As his exact legal fate remains up in the air, so too does the public's relationship with R. Kelly's body of work. He dominated R&B for years, and some of his most famous hits, including Chart Climbers, I Believe I Can Fly, and Step in the Name of Love, over time became ubiquitous at celebratory events. Aspects of his work raised eyebrows before and have more recently been regarded by some as ignored signs, such as Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, the 1994 album he wrote and produced for Aaliyah when she was a teenager. Okay. And the song Ain't Nothing But a Number on there is about a young girl want to have sex with an older man. That's what the song Age Ain't Nothing But a Number is about. And R. Kelly wrote and produced that album. See, even back then, so we knew parts of it, but like to put everything, because 94, we didn't have social media in 1994. So we knew, okay, so R. Kelly wrote it and produced it, things like this. And then we next, a couple of years after that or something, well, then we find out they're married, but then to put everything together, so wait a second. Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, because it wasn't until like years later that I really knew what the song was about. You start putting all this together, you start, wait, hold on. The signs were there. We just didn't know how to read the metal netter. So somebody asked the question, how do you continue to listen to that, or Sex in the Kitchen, or Trapped in a Closet, or lyrics like that? Okay. All right. So check out the rest of this article. They talk about the Mute R. Kelly campaign, which was co-founded in 2007. So read the rest of this article here from Post. R. Kelly found guilty on all charges in sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Then now New York Times has live updates. I looked at a number of different articles that they had going on today from the New York Times in different aspects of the case, etc. If we look at this one here from the New York Times, this is R. Kelly's convicted on all counts after decades of accusations of abuse. Okay, so you can read this, and then they have updates. They have a hashtag Me Too moment for Black women as well. We'll probably talk some about this because they had so many articles from the New York Times. I didn't get a chance to look at all of them. Okay, so we'll probably talk about some of this tomorrow. But once again, when African-American women are abused, people want to make excuses. They for some reason, well, I understand it's history and understanding white supremacy, racism. And oftentimes you have African-American men who internalize the misogynism. I mean, the misogyny. There was misogyny in the civil rights movement. Okay. So oftentimes African-American men internalize misogyny because it's been marketed to us in music and hip hop and things like this. We internalize that and then replicate the virus. So there was when Surviving R. Kelly came out, I was doing some research on like sexual abuse and things like that. And we talked about this here on the show. I came across information on African-American women being abused. Let me see. This was so there was a story from WXYZ Channel 7 here in Detroit. And they picked up a story from an ABC affiliate in Cleveland. This article here is Surviving R. Kelly sheds light on bigger issue. Black women raped at higher rates, but report less. Okay. So when people talk about high-tech lynching, a celebrity. They don't talk about a high-tech lynching of African-American women being sex trafficked and sexually abused. Let's look at this briefly here. You can read the rest of it. Okay, this one here. This is from WXYZ Channel 7 here in Detroit. Surviving R. Kelly sheds light on bigger issue. Black women raped at higher rates but report less. Black women raped at higher rates but report less. Okay, so if we go through, look at this here. They talked to they went to a shelter, a shelter for abused women, and they were talking to the counselors there. Quote, we actually see a lot of young ladies that have been, groomed into believing that somebody loves and cares for them, and then the person is actually taking advantage of them and victimizing them and causing harm to them. The person they talked to here, this was Teresa Stafford of the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. Teresa Stafford of the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. She said, this is especially true in the Black community. She said, we have to get into a point in our society where we feel that Black girls deserve the treatment and protection of other young girls in our community. We have to get into a point in our society where we feel that Black girls deserve the treatment and protection of other young girls in our community. Now, Teresa Stafford of the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center says 60% of African-American girls are sexually abused by the time they turn 18. Now, so one study I saw said 40%. She said 60%. Okay, so if you split the difference, you're looking at 50%. Yeah, but she said 60%. One study I saw said 40%. If you split the difference, it's 50%, but still 40% is high. And that is much higher than white women of the same age by age 18. Teresa Stafford said that's a number that's extremely higher than any of their counterparts. She adds only 1 in 15 Black women actually report the abuse. She said, quote, I think we have to get to a point in society that we are talking to our young Black girls and just the Black community as whole, okay? That we are talking to our young Black girls and just the Black community as a whole, having a conversation that sexual violence exists in the community and that we have a system and organizations to respond when these young ladies come forward to disclose, okay? All right, so then if you need to someone about sexual abuse, assault, or rape, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE, 1-800-656-HOPE 4673. You can access the hotline, access 24/7 help online by visiting online.rain, RAINN.org, online.rain, RAINN.org. We'll post a link here to this on the thread of the broadcast. Now, we've talked about adultification bias here on the show, and we really dealt with this when well, I've talked about it a number of times. I've been studying media for 30 years, but especially when WAP came out about R. Kelly and about Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, when WAP came out, and I talked about how they would you will only see African American women do something like that. They will only allow African American women to do a song like that. And then the bass line of the song repeated the phrase, there's some whores in this house, about 79 times throughout the song. They will only allow African American women to do that. They would not allow white women to do that. And Kylie Jenner, who's a white female billionaire from the Kardashian family, she's in the video. If you research this, there was a petition to have her digitally removed. Some white people put together this petition to have her digitally removed from the video because they didn't think that she should be in the video. Okay. Now you had some African Americans who were objecting to her being in the video, but the white people were saying, what they were basically saying is, you are a billionaire and you were too good to be in that video. You don't need to be in that video. Let those Negroes do that. Let those Negroes do that. You're too good to be in that video. We want to rescue the white woman. We want to protect the white woman. You only protect what you respect. You only protect what you respect. They wanted to rescue the white woman from the whorehouse and let the Negroes stay in the whorehouse. I did a panel discussion dealing with WAP, and we dealt with negative corporate control hip hop in general. It wasn't just specifically on that, but we dealt with negative corporate control hip hop in general. And I'm looking for my notes on WAP. They were right there. Look, I think this is it right here. I have hundreds of articles and I got stacks of articles and all this stuff here. This is about a 3-foot stack of articles to my right. Now this is about we got this up right here. This other stack right here. This is just one of the mini stacks of articles, but I got a 3-foot stack next to me. So, all right. Adultification bias. So Huffington Post had an article from June 27th, 2017. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. So you have to understand how deep all of this is. Okay. And okay, actually I got 2 3-foot stacks next to me. I got one near the home gym and then one right in front of the other stack. I got to clean some of this stuff up. But this other one here, I want to find dealing with the Jezebel stereotype, because I was doing some research on that. Hold on. I think it's in this stack here. If not, we could pull it up. It's from the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State. Where is that? And I saw it recently. So we'll find that. It's from the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State, dealing with the Jezebel stereotype. Okay. Oh, that's Department of Homeland Security. Where is that? I thought it was in here. But we'll find that one. So one of these. That's not it. All right, I'll pull it up. We'll find it. But if we look at this one here from Huffington Post, just saying, just bear with me. Just give me a minute here to pull this up here. And I talked about this when I was on Steve Hood's show on when he interviewed me for his show on Channel 50 here in Detroit. And we talked about Cardi B and WAP and all of this. Now, unfortunately, some African-American men have internalized this mentality, okay, and end up abusing African-American women as well. And as I said towards the beginning of the show, R. Kelly was a victim because he was a victim of molestation when he was a child. He was a victim of molestation. And reporting is it was his older sister who molested him. Okay. And I said he needs psychological help. His ass needs to go to prison, but he needs psychological help while he's in prison as well, because apparently he didn't get it while he was outside. Black girls are viewed. Let's pull this up here on the big screen. Hashtag keep R. Kelly. Yeah, keep R. Kelly's ass in prison. That's where you need to keep him. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. Now, see, now this ties into why only Negroes could do a song like WAP, do a video like WAP, have a bass line that repeats about 79 times. There's some whores in this house. Perform WAP at the Grammys and American Music Awards. And at the Grammys, they got like a stripper pole and a glass heel. Only Negroes are allowed to do this. The way a people treat you is largely based upon what they think about you. What they think about you is what they've read, seen, and heard about you. Okay. You only protect what you respect. White women are perceived, even though misogyny is directed towards white women, is even more so against African American women. But white women are deemed to need protection more so. This is why you have so many law enforcement resources that are expended when a white woman goes missing, especially a blonde hair white woman that looks good on cable news. So many resources are expended to go find her, but not so much when it's an African-American woman missing. The adultification of Black girls leads to harsher disciplinary treatment, researchers found. Now, this is from June 27, 2017. There have been a number of different studies dealing with adultification bias. Let's look at this quickly here. A new report found that adults view Black girls as less innocent and more adult-like than white girls starting as young as age 5. Less innocent and more adult-like than white girls starting at age 5. Now, the name of the study is called Girlhood Interrupted. Girlhood Interrupted, the erasure of Black girls' childhood. Girlhood Interrupted, the erasure of Black girls' childhood. It was released in June 2017 by Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Equality. Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Equality. And the study shows that the society's perception of Black girls leads to the adultification of African American girls. The adultification of African American girls. Okay. So this is why you're only going to see African American women do a song like WAP, performing at the Grammys, performing at the American Music Awards. All right, they're not going to let a top white female artist do something like that. And it is financed by Atlantic Records, a white corporation. So you have to like really put all the pieces together with this. And the dehumanization of African Americans has always been entertainment in this country as well. The dehumanization of African Americans has always been entertainment. Now, the report shows that adults believe that Black girls seem older than white girls of the same age and think that Black girls need less nurturing, less protection, less support, and less comfort than white girls. The report shows that adults believe that Black girls seem older than white girls of the same age, and that African American girls need less nurturing, less protection, less support, and less comfort than white girls. The study Childhood Interrupted, the erasure of Black girls' childhood, also found that people assume that Black girls are more independent, know more about adult topics, and know more about sex than young white girls. The study also found that people assume that African American girls are more independent, know more about adult topics, and know more about sex than young white girls. Knowing more about sex, the presumption that they know more about sex than young white girls, the presumption that they need less protection makes them vulnerable to sex trafficking, makes them vulnerable to sexual abuse. The report, which built on information from a 2014 study by Dr. Philip Atiba Goff, that found that Black boys are more likely to be viewed as older and suspected of crimes starting at age 10, is the first of its kind to focus on girls. Researchers surveyed 325 adults from racial and ethnic backgrounds in a ratio that mirrors the country's population. Many of the adults surveyed had a high school diploma or higher. They found the biggest differences in the ways adults view children in the age brackets of ages 5 to 9 and 10 to 14. These differences continue to a lesser degree in the age bracket of 15 to 19. Rebecca Epstein Rebecca Epstein was the lead author and executive director for the center, and Jamila J. Blake, co-author and associate professor at Texas A&M University. They broke down the relationship adultification has on the ways Black girls are disciplined during a press conference called Tuesday. They said one of the reasons this might be occurring is because Black girls are being held to the same stereotypes we have of Black women. One of the reasons this might be occurring is because Black girls are being held to the same stereotypes we have of Black women. Black women have historically and currently been seen as being aggressive, loud, defiant, and over-sexualized, which goes back to the Jezebel stereotype, which goes back to African-American women and girls being forced to be breeders. And during slavery, you had the thought process that it was impossible to rape a Black woman because she was property. It was impossible to rape a Black woman. You could do what you want to. You could dehumanize her. You could do what you want to, generally speaking. Black women have historically and currently been seen as being aggressive, loud, defiant, and over-sexualized. And I believe, along with many other researchers, that the stereotypes of Black women are being mapped onto Black girls. The stereotypes of Black women are being mapped or projected onto Black girls. The report stated that potential implications for the findings could be research exploring how these perceptions of Black girls affect how they are disciplined at school and beyond. Now, when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, we talked briefly about R. Kelly, but we talked about Jelani Day. Jelani Day, his body was found in Illinois. And we spoke to Jelani Day's mother, Carmen Day. Okay, Roland interviewed her, and then we commented on the panel. Okay, and one of the things I talked about is the disparate coverage when African American women and girls go missing. But I talked about adultification bias and how you only protect what you respect, and because of adultification bias and understanding a system of white supremacy and in the history of this country, we have this dehumanization, degradation, and devaluing of African American women. This is why we have to stop referring to our women as B's and H's and thoughts and things like this, because when you put these negative pejorative terms on them, this dehumanizes them. As the same thing. This is why I don't call our people the N-word. This is why we have to stop calling our people the N-word and stop allowing other people to call us the N-word. Okay, when you put negative, pejorative, dehumanizing terms on someone, this degrades them, and then people will then treat you accordingly based upon the program. The way you treat a people is largely based upon how you think about a people. How you think about a people is largely based upon what you've been taught about a people. What you've been taught about a people is largely based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about them. So we have to understand how all this comes together. Read the rest of this article here. This is from 2017, Huffington Post. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. Okay, so this talks about adultification bias. There's a lot of information dealing with adultification bias and push out. There's a book called Push Out, which deals with how African-American girls are pushed out of school. And this ties in adultification bias as well. Let's see here. Okay, so we got this. I think didn't I have another okay. All right, so we have that. And then there was, okay, so that's adultification bias. Okay, that's enough. Because I was already tired before I start this show, and I want to hurry up and get to Don Cornelius. How's everybody doing? Okay, we're going to switch gears, talk about the Hippest Trip in America, and talk about Don Cornelius in just a second. Be sure to register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We have the information right on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. You don't have to be present in class at a certain time. We do the class live on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go back and watch the class anytime. Okay, you have access to the class. Even next year, you want to go back and watch the class, you can watch the full class. All right. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just had this past Saturday. And we go through and we look at a little more than 100-year period of history. We look at some events leading up to the Civil War taking place, which was 1861, 1865. Then we deal with the Civil War. We deal with 40 Acres and the Mule, Special Field Order number 15, 13th Amendment. We deal with the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, the Compromise of 1877 that ends Reconstruction. We look at advances that we were making also during this period of time after slavery ends, and then laws and policies that were put in place to reverse those advances, especially after we're going to see these attacks during Reconstruction, but especially after Reconstruction ends. We see a wholesale effort of white supremacists in the South to take back control of the state legislatures, take back control of their governments, take back control of society, etc. Institute segregation on railroad cars, etc. This is before Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. We're going to see this in Tennessee. We're going to see this in the 1880s. Okay. And various states adopt this. So then we take you through the Jim Crow era. We look at the laws and policies put in place. We look at state constitutions: Texas State Constitution, 1876; Mississippi State Constitution, 1890; Louisiana State Constitution, 1898; South Carolina State Constitution, 1895; Alabama State Constitution, 1901. And they're changing the laws in their state constitutions to suppress the votes of African Americans and to suppress us in daily life. All right. So we see how this plays out. In Louisiana, in their state constitution, they passed a law that, so you have 12 jurors on a jury, right? In Louisiana, in 1898, in their state constitution, they wrote into the law that you can be convicted by a 9-3 jury. So if 3 people on the jury found you not guilty, you could still be convicted of a felony of murder if 9 people found you guilty. The reason why they did this was to suppress and nullify if you had 2 or 3 African Americans on the jury, because Louisiana African Americans could serve on juries. So as a way to override 2 or 3 African Americans on the jury, they wrote into their state constitution 9-3 majority rule on felony convictions. So if 9 white people found you guilty of murder and 3 African Americans said you were not guilty, you're found guilty, you go to prison. Years later, they changed it in Louisiana to a 10-2 majority. But it wasn't changed until a unanimous, the jurors unanimously had to find you guilty. So all 12. That wasn't changed in the state constitution until 2018 in the state of Louisiana. So after Reconstruction ends, we see changes to the state constitutions in these former Confederate states design, and they're saying when you study their state conventions and things like this, they're talking about imposing white supremacy. The Alabama state constitution in 1901. And written, like if you look at this here, Encyclopedia of Alabama. And when you go through and look at the statements from people, they're telling you, like, you know, we talk about the Mississippi Plan and Mississippi Convention and Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention. He said, we are here to exclude the Negro. He said this in 1890. He said exactly why they were there. He said, we are here to exclude the Negro. And the Mississippi Plan became the model that's going to be adopted by other Southern states to suppress the African-American vote and lock us out of political power, because there were about 2,000 African-Americans who got elected to public office during Reconstruction. The Mississippi Plan is what it was called. We came here to exclude the Negro. This became the Mississippi State Convention of 1890. White people were the majority, white people were the minority population in Mississippi. African Americans were the majority population in Mississippi in 1890. That's a legacy of slavery. So a minority population in the state legislature is changing the state constitution to lock the majority population out of voting, suppress the votes of African Americans. This is what happened in Mississippi. So when you had the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it's giving protection and making illegal these poll taxes and literacy tests, all this stuff that was passed in 1890 in Mississippi. The convention's president, Solomon Saladin Calhoun, a white county judge, put the voting issue bluntly. He said, let's tell the truth. If it bursts, the bottom of the universe, he said. He said, we came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this one answer. We came here to exclude the Negro. Delegates of the Mississippi State Convention eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority. African Americans were the majority of the population in Mississippi. The Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended Reconstruction. Read the rest of this. Read the rest of this article. So this ties into a deep history, which is connected to the Voting Rights Act of 65 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill, the Freedom to Vote Act, all this stuff. All this is connected, goes back to what happened after slavery ended and what happened after Reconstruction ended. If we look at very quickly here, then we're going to get to Don Cornelius. If we look at this from Encyclopedia of Alabama, well, we can look at this one here from New York Times. This is from September 19th, 2021. Okay. September 19th, 2021. This just came out. Alabama begins removing racist language from its constitution. This is not ancient history. This is, I teach another class dealing with history going back thousands of years, dealing with ancient history. This is not ancient history. That other class is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is not ancient history. Alabama begins removing racist language from its constitution. Many outdated provisions have long since been invalidated, but the language was specifically intended to enshrine white supremacy has remained. But the language that was specifically intended to enshrine white supremacy has remained. This is Alabama State Representative Marika Coleman, the assistant minority leader in the Alabama House. She said, we're having real deal conversations. People may not have been having those conversations before. Conversations we should have had a long time ago. Conversations we should have had a long time ago. The last time Alabama politicians rewrote their state constitution back in 1901, their aspirations were explicitly racist. Quote, to establish white supremacy in this state. This is what they said. To establish white supremacy in the state. Alabama State Constitution, 1901. Because we deal with this in the class. The new quote, the new constitution eliminates the ignorant Negro vote and places the control of our government where God Almighty is intended it should be, with the Anglo-Saxon race, said John Knox, the president of the Constitutional Convention. He said in a speech encouraging voters to ratify the document in 1901. He said the new constitution eliminates the ignorant Negro vote and places the control of our government where God Almighty intended it should be, with the Anglo-Saxon race. Now, 120 years later, the Jim Crow era laws that disenfranchised African-American voters and enforced segregation across Alabama are gone, but the offensive language written into the state constitution remains. Now, as communities across the South reconsider racist symbols and statues, activists in Alabama who have labored for 20 years to convince voters that rewriting their state constitution is important and long overdue, they see an opportunity to get it done. Marva Douglas, an actress and retired teacher who joined Alabama's Citizens for Constitutional Reform in the early 2000s, she said, I am tired of being treated as a second-class citizen, and terms like colored that are throughout the Constitution, the 1901 Alabama State Constitution, play a part in that feeling. Efforts to rewrite the Alabama State Constitution failed twice before, but last fall, voters, jolted partly by racial justice protests across the country, gave a green light. This month, a committee of lawmakers and lay people began the process of redrafting. Their work will go before the voters next year to be ratified before the new constitution can take effect. Okay. So read this here from New York Times. This is from September 19th, 2020. Alabama begins removing racist language from its constitution. From the 1901 Alabama State Constitution that was written after Reconstruction ended, as a way to take back full control of the state legislature and the political office, political systems there in Alabama. But what I really wanted to, I was really looking for is this here dealing with the Alabama State Constitution, and this is from Encyclopedia. Encyclopedia of Alabama. Encyclopedia of Alabama.org. And they deal with the Alabama state constitution. This right here. Alabama state constitution in 1901. Encyclopedia of Alabama.org. Written primarily to codify white supremacy by disfranchising or disenfranchising blacks, the Constitution of 1901 continues to shape Alabama politics in the 21st century. The Constitution also, the Alabama State Constitution also concentrated power in the state legislature, decreased opportunities for home rule, and established voter requirements that even many white men could not meet. Established voter requirements like poll taxes and literacy tests that even many white men could not meet, reducing the political influence of the state's many poor whites because they were trying to lock out African Americans from voting and lock us out of political power. The political developments that led to the Constitution of 1901 originated in the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. The Republican-controlled U.S. Congress abolished slavery under the 13th Amendment, ratified December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment, granted citizenship to former slaves under the 14th Amendment of 1868, and guaranteed them the right to vote guaranteed African-American men the right to vote with the 15th Amendment of 1870. Congress forced the ex-Confederate state to pass constitutions that further articulated these rights for former slaves. When Alabama's Democratic Party regained control of the state government in the election of 1874, one of its actions was to overturn Alabama's Reconstruction Constitution of 1868, which had expanded voting rights among African Americans and poor whites. So what you're going to see, even during Reconstruction, towards the end of Reconstruction, you're going to have Republicans losing political power, and you're going to have the political offices, the state legislatures being taken over by the white supremacists, the Southerners, but it's going to continue after Reconstruction ends also. This is how you get something like Louisiana, Kansas, the exodus out of Kansas, the black exodus, the exodus to Kansas, the black exodus of 1879, in Louisiana, the black exodus of 1879, leaving Louisiana, and that dealt with the results of the Louisiana statewide elections of 1878. And Democrats won back control of the state legislature in 1878. And you're going to have a lot of African Americans who leave Louisiana, and they're going into Kansas. Okay, they're going into Kansas looking for a better way of life, fleeing Louisiana. So what we do in the class, we go through and analyze approximately a 10-year period of history. And we take you through a timeline of history to understand what happened to us after slavery ended, how we got to where we are today, the laws and policies put in place, so we understand where we need to go from here. Okay, so this is at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the class. It's regularly $130. It's on sale $70. As soon as you register, you can start watching the course content. We do the class live on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Watch from around the world. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. Even next year, you still have access. You can go back and watch it. Okay. And there's some bonus lectures that you get from me also in the class. As soon as you register, there's some bonus lectures that you'll get as well. Okay. So very quickly here. Fugitive Slave Act. We'll have to get to that tomorrow. I want to squeeze this in dealing with Don Cornelius. So there was information from little known Black history fact. And today is the birthday of Don Cornelius. I remember watching Soul Train when I was a kid. I remember growing up in the 70s watching Soul Train. Came on Friday night, watching Soul Train. And, you know, I remember the commercials from Billy D. Williams, Colt 45. It works every time. Remember the Afro Sheen commercials, all of that. So Don Cornelius built an empire, okay? And, you know, this is, we really need to study people like this, Don Cornelius, Barry Gordy, that built empires. But more importantly, we need to focus on understanding how to keep control of the music, ownership of the music. Because when I watch, you know, late at night, and they have the 70s, you know, by the music collection from the 70s soul songs, 140 songs, things like this, all that stuff. It's like Time Warner owns a lot of that music. It's like white people own a lot of that music that we made. We need to own this music and control it, own the masters, control it. So Don Cornelius was born September 27th, 1936. We know he passed away February 1st, 2012. And every week he took us on the Hippest Trip in America. The Hippest Trip in America on Soul Train. So people got to see the latest fashions, the latest dances on Soul Train. You got the, you know, and then so Soul Train helped influence local dance shows like The Scene here in Detroit, The Scene and Nat Morris, Sugar to Sugar, Salt to Salt. If you didn't get off, it ain't my fault. So there's a piece here from blackamericaweb.com. Let's pull this up here. Hold on. Okay, so the little known Black history fact, and this deals with Don Cornelius. So Don Cornelius was born September 27, 1936 in Chicago. And his birth name was Donald Cortez Cornelius. Donald Cortez Cornelius. He was born on the south side of Chicago and raised in the historic Bronzeville neighborhood. After serving in the Marines, Don Cornelius was honorably discharged after 18 months and began working a series of odd jobs before betting on himself and taking a broadcasting course. The risky move paid off, and in 1966, Don Cornelius was hired by local station WVON. In 1967, he was hired by WCIU TV, where he hosted a show called A Black's View of the News. A Black's View of the News was the name of the program. Now, there was some background information here very quickly here. So Don Cornelius joined the Marines and served on a Korean air base for 18 months. Now, upon returning to Chicago in 1956, Don Cornelius married his childhood sweetheart, Dolores Harrison. The young couple soon had two children, Anthony in 1958 and Raymond in 1959. And money was too short for Don Cornelius to afford college. He said, "I needed money to support my family," he told Billboard magazine. He said, "So I sold tires, I sold cars and insurance. Now, Don Cornelius did well as a salesman. By 1966, he was making $250 a week. But the arts tempted him. He wanted to become a radio announcer. He has the voice to be a radio announcer, okay? He wanted to become a radio announcer. He said, quote, "People always talked about my voice. he recalled in an interview with Billboard magazine. He said, so I took a broadcasting course as a lark. I took a broadcasting course as a lark. The $400 Don Cornelius paid for the broadcasting course was money well spent. In 1966, Don Cornelius landed a part-time job. Let me see what happened here. Just a second here. Let me bring the picture back up. Okay, in 1966, Don Cornelius landed a part-time job as an announcer with WVON in Chicago. And WVON still exists today, also, for those that don't know. His take-home pay wasn't quite what he was used to, only $100 a week, but he was fulfilling an ambition. He said, quote, I started as a newsman, but I was also the swing overnight man, he explained to Billboard magazine. He said, I filled in as an all-around substitute at WVON. I felt I had to justify my job there. He said it was a very black station. He said, I was sitting in for DJs and news people, doing public affairs outside the station, doing the talk show, and doing commercials. He said the job was a whirlwind. Though, and the constant schedule changes began to wear on Don Cornelius. When Roy Wood, Don Cornelius' supervisor and mentor at WVON in Chicago, moved to WCIU TV, a small UHF television station. You know that's so you don't hear nothing about UHF TV. Okay, a small UHF television station. Young Don Cornelius began moonlighting for his former boss. When Cornelius joined WCIU TV, he already had Soul Train in mind. He took the name from a traveling music show he had hosted for WVON. The format featuring dancing teenagers and popular records came from Dick Clark's American Bandstand. What made Soul Train different was its black music format. WCIU's TV management was already attempting ethnic programming, so when Don Cornelius pitched his idea, they agreed to give it a try. Okay, just a second. Let me try to pull this up here. Hold on just a minute here. There's some information I printed up a few years ago. Let's see if I can still find this. Okay, so let's see. All right, so the format featuring dancing teenagers and popular records came from Dick Clark's American Bandstand. What made Soul Train different was its black music format. WCIU's management was already attempting ethnic programming. So when Don Cornelius pitched his idea, they agreed to give it a try. Don Cornelius had the go-ahead from the station. All he needed was a sponsor. He had to go ahead from the station to do the show. Okay, Soul Train. All he needed was a sponsor. He needed a company to pay for this. Okay, all he needed was a sponsor. Now, his Soul Train pitch, however, landed on deaf ears in the corporate community until he met George O'Hare. George O'Hare was a merchandise manager at Sears and Roebuck, Sears, who offered some assistance. Don Cornelius said of George, quote, George was a guy that was always receptive to new concepts. Okay. He said, when I went in, I expected him to tell me what so many others had said about programming for African Americans, for blacks. The theory that blacks, quote unquote, need cultural or historical programs are not necessarily entertainment, and not necessarily entertainment. The theory that blacks need cultural or historical programs and not necessarily entertainment. Now, on August 17th, 1970, the very first Soul Train episode premiered on WCIU TV channel 26. WCIU TV channel 26, August 17th, 1970. Don Cornelius told Billboard magazine, he said, quote, the show centered on a live appearance by singer Jerry Butler, then of the Impressions, the singing group, the Impressions, and dancers and myself in some goofy outfit we came up with. He said, but aside from the fact that it was the most inexpensive package imaginable, it was basically what we do today, same style and attitude. Now, Don Cornelius hosted the show, produced it, and sold all the advertising. Within weeks, Soul Train became Chicago's #1 show among African Americans. Yet many companies still did not see a need to advertise on Soul Train. They felt they could get the same audience by advertising on quote unquote white or general audience shows. It was a struggle, but Don Cornelius and his winning ratings finally convinced Wait On, WATE-ON, Wait On, Joe Louis Milk, and Coca-Cola to join Sears as sponsors. Now, Soul Train then went national. On October 2nd, 1971, Soul Train went on the air and was aired once a week, produced at Hollywood's Metro Media Studios. It was glitter and more colorful. It was glitzier and more colorful than the Chicago version on WCIU TV. But in all other respects, it was the same. Don Cornelius was confident of success. He said, because of Chicago, I knew something that most of my doubters did not know. And when they smirked, I smiled, he noted in a Billboard magazine interview. He said, I also knew George Johnson's criteria for quality, and I was determined to attain it. The national show Soul Train had its doubters. However, the syndicating agency was able to debut Soul Train in only 7 of the 25 areas Don Cornelius had targeted. Cornelius said practically all the stations that turned the show down had no other black-oriented entertainment shows running. Practically all of the stations that turned the show down had no other black-oriented entertainment shows running. Now, he pointed out in a Billboard interview article, he said this in the Billboard interview article. Now, luckily, even television stations find it hard to argue with success. Within 8 months, all 25 areas were showing Soul Train. And in August of 1972, Don Cornelius signed a $1 million advertising deal with Johnson Products. Now, Soul Train competed with American Bandstand. Okay, Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Soul Train's popularity brought Don Cornelius in direct conflict with Dick Clark and American Bandstand. In 1973, civil rights activist Jesse Jackson, whose Chicago-based Operation Push was regularly boosted on Soul Train, told Rolling Stone magazine, quote, Soul Train's success has partially been at the expense of Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Soul Train has consistently outrated and overshadowed Bandstand, end quote. Now, according to Reverend Jesse Jackson, the powerful Dick Clark was taking steps to get his audience back. First, Dick Clark recruited Soul Train dancers for American Bandstand. Then he began producing a dance show called Soul Unlimited, S-O-U-L, Soul Unlimited, which was a program that essentially copied Soul Train. Backed by the powerful ABC TV network, the dance show Soul Unlimited from Dick Clark posed a serious threat to Soul Train from Don Cornelius, which had no, and Soul Train had no network affiliation, whereas Soul Unlimited was backed by ABC TV network. Now, according to a Rolling Stone magazine correspondent, Don Cornelius called Dick Clark's action and, quote, overt attempt to seize control of the black-oriented TV. An overt attempt to seize control of the black-oriented TV, end quote. Now, the Soul Train American Bandstand controversy was short-lived. Dick Clark and Don Cornelius discussed the matter, and Dick Clark dropped Soul Unlimited while offering to co-produce some black specials for Don Cornelius, with Don Cornelius for ABC, offering to co-produce some black specials with Don Cornelius for ABC. Despite its racial overtones, the conflict seemed less a struggle between black and white and more a contest over the Saturday afternoon audience. By 1974, 95 stations were showing Soul Train. Don Cornelius told Billboard, I like to say it was a struggle, but it really wasn't. It just was a thing that was so long overdue that it caught on instantaneously. It was just a thing that was so long overdue that it caught on instantaneously. The point is that there should be far more than just 1 hour of black-oriented entertainment. Anybody could see that there was a market there, but it's so difficult to get something like that started unless you get money and some kind of reputation, end quote. So there's information from the Gale Encyclopedia, and encyclopedia.com, dealing with Don Cornelius. This is information that I printed up some years back, probably about 2013. It was on answers.com, and they've moved that information to encyclopedia.com. But you can check this out here. Don Cornelius, 1936. They didn't update that he here. They don't have the year that he died. He died in 2012. But then also read the article from the Little Known Black History Fact. Remember the Tom Joyner Morning Show, Little Known Black History Fact. They had one of Don Cornelius back in 2013 by originally, because I printed it up, it was from Erica L. Taylor for Black America Web, but then also this one here is from D.L. Chandler, Little Known Black History Fact, Don Cornelius. So check this out as well. But happy birthday, Don Cornelius, born September 27th, 1936. All right. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. We're here 6 days a week. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. And we also have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So this is our official Cash App account, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App. And when you go to it, so to say Michael, and show my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. That's not me. Register for our 10-week online course on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Then we have a new class starting up on Sundays, a new section of ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach in school. This class here is a fantastic one. We do 1,000 years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We do with ancient Africa, Nile Valley region of Africa, ancient Kemet, Nubia, Ethiopia. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. Talk about Ghana, Songhai, Mali, all this, and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Also, we take you through a timeline of history. Class number 1 starts up Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. This class is on sale, $80. We do the class live, all the sessions recorded. Go back and watch it anytime. There's bonus content there that you can start watching as soon as you register. Click on register here. It takes you to the next page. Just click on enroll, and we'll see you in class on Sunday. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behaviors not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you